Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. Happy to be here on this July 17th, halfway through the month of July, in the year of our Lord 2020, or as they say, what do they say? Common Era or something? No, it's BCE is before Common Era, and then I forget what they call the present. Anyone know?
Hmm.
They used to be AD, and then they changed it because they didn't want to give too much credit to.
I know that it's 2022 and not 2020.
Did I say 2020? Okay.
Yes, you
Maybe.
did.
I'm trying.
I feel like I know what year it is. I feel like that. Maybe because of COVID and everything. Maybe I'm in a time loop or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, we're happy to be here tonight, and tonight's topic is Healthy Relationships Part 2, By Your Side or Not? Question mark. And this one was written by Jen. Okay, as we said, we will have a 4-stream series on the topic of healthy relationships. And last week we heard Marisa's perspective, which is very good. Got a lot of conversation out of that one. And then this week it's Jen. And then I will follow up. The men go last, of course. Chivalry is not dead. And then Glenn will finish us off on the series. This also gives him a break because he does a lot of the writing for the broadcast. And he's a busy man, you know. So we have to give him a break. We have to keep him happy now and then. Okay, take a break, Glenn. Settle down, relax, get comfy, cozy.
You don't have to keep me happy, Crips. That's my responsibility.
See right there, healthy relationship.
I love it. Oh, that's great.
Bravo,
That's
bravo.
great. Oh, I love you guys. All right. So for those of you listening the first time, we have started to get some new subscribers because Marisa is so kind to tell people about our broadcast over here, and she's a part of our broadcast. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. We're glad to have her. And not just because she has her own channels and she's willing to promote, big promoter. So if you go over to one of her broadcasts, especially the Friday night one, she and Jen did another art stream, which went off, in my opinion, very well. Jen had to leave a little bit early because she got really hungry. And we're going to try to eat sooner. And then we know that Marisa's broadcast going a little bit longer than usual. So it's a little shortened, at least Jen's participation in it. But go over to Nez Lover's channel and see all the different things that she has going on over there. And she has a friend, and I don't know if she's a promoter or what her title is, but she the whole time that the broadcast is going on, she posts everyone channels in there. I thought, what a novel idea. I mean, it seems like some people would think it was spamming, but she's doing it for all the people that are in the chat, all the channels, and so everyone gets a chance to kind of go in there while art is being done, and there's good singing going on and conversations.
Good music.
And they get a chance to visit some other channels. So do yourself a favor, go and check out Nez Lover's channel, and I'll have her post the channel sometime during this broadcast. And there's some really friendly people over there. Some of them have come over here as well. So anyway, there's my shameless plug of Nez Lover's channel. We're happy to do that. And, my point was that she's brought some subscribers over to us, which we're happy to have you. And we'll say hello to those that are in the chat in just a moment. So for those of you listening for the first time, my name is Jason Cripps. I generally go by Cripps, but you can call me whatever you want. Jace, Jason, JC, Crippler, Cripps, any.
Creeps.
Hey, Creeps. Yeah. That's all right. I don't get offended. I don't have a deflated ego or an inflated ego.
There you go.
Working on it. So I am the main host for the broadcast, though I am helped and very much aided by the other three on the panel. And I will introduce Marisa first. Marisa, take a second and say hello to the peoples.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jason. Hi, Jen. Hi, Glenn. Hello to Scully.
Hey,
Hi,
Scully.
Scully. Scully's the author who reads to you. Check him out. Yes, I do love to go live and do my artwork and post some other fun things that I like to do too. Jen joined me for the second week in a row this past Friday. Please go check it out. It was an excellent stream. And well, words. What words are good enough to describe? You just simply must experience it. Really,
Yep.
it was a great
Yep.
time.
I would agree.
And I do have a
Okay.
lot of people like Scully's House of Thrillers right here in the chat. Please check him out. And it's a good place to meet good people and enjoy art, some music, some good conversation. I do take prayer requests. Always happy to pray for you in the name of Jesus. And you never know who you might meet there. You never know who's going to pop into Nez Studios. Hello, everybody. I'm looking forward to digging in tonight's conversation. We're going to have fun, whether you like it or not.
Thank you, Marisa. And you
Love it.
also do. I can't think of the word for it when someone asks you to do an art piece for them. I can't think of the word. There's a word for
Commission.
it.
The word is commission. Yes, I
Yeah,
do
thank
sell
you.
pieces of artwork that I create.
Yep.
A lot of it, some of it not on the air, but a lot of it is created on the air. And if you
Yeah.
see something you like, my email's in my description of most of my videos. Drop me an email and we'll talk. And I take
There you
payment
go.
through PayPal. Also, I do commissions, and I did a commission just this last Friday. So
That's
that
what I was
was
Yeah.
getting
fun
at.
too.
That's what I was getting at. I felt like I was getting a little bit of trouble because it was a icon for one of the channels. One of the people that were in the chat, and a good friend of Marisa's, and it was an alien, kind of a hippie alien. And I was saying in the chat that it's the coolest hippie demon I've ever seen.
Uh-oh.
And he's
Alien,
like,
alien.
oh, he's nice. He's nice. I was like, yeah, I'm sure he is. I didn't want to get in trouble.
He looks nice. I like his
Okay.
sweatshirt.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Jen did watercolors, and she ended up. I think you did 2 drawings that night, and then
Yeah.
you posted them on Facebook, and they both turned out beautiful. So definitely give that a chance. So Jen, since we're talking about you and Marisa doing the channel on a Friday, why don't you take a second and say hello to the people? This is my wife,
Hey guys, great to be here again. Always wonderful to hang out with the people in the chat and hang out with the 3 of you guys. Good people, and great discussion. So I'm very much looking forward to just the questions and this write-up and the conversation that ensues.
Yeah, good, excellent. Because you did the write up, so the questions are ones that were asked by you, and I'm looking forward to getting that too. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, our friend from Australia, Glenn. Glenn, say hello to the people, sir, if you would.
Hi, everyone, and I'm not selling anything.
No. No, Glenn doesn't like us, selling anything on the channel, and we don't sell anything. But it's a different thing to promote other people's channels to make sure that people are aware. What's interesting is our channel at present is smaller than Marisa, so she's actually doing the favor for us. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention to people that are not subscribed over to Nez Lover that they know where to go if they're into art and song and other things. Then I just wanted to put that in there. Glenn doesn't have a channel, unfortunately. I have in the past encouraged him to do that, and he talked about doing it for a while, but he's a busy man, as I said at the top of the broadcast. So hopefully he'll get some encouragement and sometime do a channel of his own. I think that would be interesting. He talk about whatever he wanted. He would not be constricted to fall into the pattern of other people. He could just go on and on about whatever he wanted to. I think you would enjoy that.
You mean go on and on like you guys?
I would say you have to work up to going on and on like those guys.
I'll give you that one. That's a fair comment.
I would totally watch the Glenn channel. Are you kidding me? Oh, yeah.
I know, right?
Same here.
Yeah. I think we would all
Every time he
watch
does a write-up, it's like a chance to climb inside Glenn, and it's always fascinating and adventurous. So
That's right. Well, okay. So with the introduction of the panel done, tonight's write-up is done by Jen, as I said, and you will get a chance to hear her lovely voice reading this one. And before we do that, though, let's say hello to whoever is in the chat. Jen, if you want to do that.
Nope, you're breaking.
Might be you breaking up. Just say hello to everyone in the chat if you would. Okay, can anyone else hear me?
Yep.
Okay. We can't hear Jen. All right. Jen, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that, guys.
There it goes.
Go.
Okay.
Maybe you have to do that, disconnect from the Wi-Fi thing or Bluetooth or whatever it is that you do sometimes.
Let me do that real quick before I start reading.
Okay, sorry guys.
Oh no, the Bluetooth is not on, so.
Okay. Well, you sound good now. So while you sound good, go ahead and say hello to the people in the chat if you would.
Hello, people in the chat. We have Stephen Kennedy just popped in. Hey, Stephen. Scully from Scully's House of Thriller. Scully. Nez. I know we have John Dons. Jamie. Jamie's here. Hey, Jamie.
Yeah.
And Debbie S. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Debbie.
So great to see you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. We appreciate that. And it's good to see everyone in the chat. And before we get started, please feel free to answer any of the questions that we talk about and discuss on the channel. If you put it in the chat, I see your answer. I'll be more than happy to post that for everyone to see. And also, if you have any topics, any ideas for us to discuss on True Story Live, please put that in there at any time. You can just pop it in the chat. And we definitely take suggestions from people. Okay, so this series that we're doing now is yet another suggestion from one of our listeners, and we love that. We love when you contribute ideas to the channel. So thank you. All right, Jen, whenever you're ready. Tonight's topic again is healthy relationships part 2, side or by your side or not.
All right. I'm going to dive in. Okay. What constitutes a healthy relationship? Last week, Marisa talked about her ideas on healthy relationships. She shared some of her experiences and some awesome quotes and questions. Thanks, Marisa. Inspiration for tonight's write-up comes from one of my favorite songs, By Your Side by Sade, which for the longest time, I thought it was Sade.
So I think everyone did. I think everyone did.
Link is in the description. By your side. I don't know about you guys, but this phrase hits me deep in my heart. To have someone by your side is a powerful thing, especially when you are going through the hard things of life. Feeling alone in a relationship is a really dark experience. You know you have someone physically there, but when they're in the room, but not by your side, it's painful and lonely. Some quotes. I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that make you feel all alone. And that's by Robin Williams. Next quote, don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. And that's by Albert Camus. And I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. The past 3 weeks have been a little challenging for Jason and I. It started with our van window having been found broken. The window clip that holds the window up had broken and wouldn't roll back up. As we had a mechanic friend of ours come out to look at it, we were simultaneously working on my car to get it back up and running after being parked for a year. We were thinking it was the battery, so our mechanic friend brought a charged battery over to see if the car would start up with it. It did, so we were happy about that. The following weekend, my car's engine light came on. That was concerning. And then on our way home from the chiropractor, Jason's van started to run really rough. Think horse and buggy vibrations. We almost didn't make it home, but thank God we did. The cars got worked on over this last week, and we went to pick both of them up, thinking they were both fixed. Jason's van was still running rough, and my car wouldn't start after having a new battery put in, as well as a new alternator. There are more details to this story, but I'm trying to keep it short. Don't want to be like Cripps. To get to the point, all of this carpocalypse drama was uncovering some major emotions in me personally, and that's where this write-up begins. I spent 14 years with a person who freaked out every time something went wrong. He would get angry at God, at people, at me, for causing any catastrophe, large or small. He would punch things, break things, road rage, yell for hours, sometimes over how hard life was and how God hated him and never stepped in to make his life easy. And he felt he deserved an easy life. He acted like things were happening to him, not to us. There were many times I was not okay. How could anyone be okay watching this display of anger and hurt? In many ways, in many of these instances, I was severely stressed and scared about not having the money or having a car breakdown or having our power cut off because money that was allotted for bills had been spent on inventory for our business. All of this also made me scared for my safety and stability. But because he would be flipping out, I felt I had to be the one who was calm, the one who had to be the adult and fix whatever problems there were. I was not allowed to freak out or get upset. I was not allowed to cry. That was seen as manipulative. He didn't feel like I was by his side when I was trying to be, and I sure didn't feel like he was by my side in all the muck of life's happenings. I wanted us from the beginning to be a united front, tackling problems together. This was not my experience with him. I always felt I was a part of his problems, the source or cause of his anger. He did not see me as his partner, but as someone aligned with God to make his life hard and miserable. The next quote, let's not forget it's you and me versus the problem, not you versus me. And that's by Steve Maraboli. Fast forward to now with Jason and these car problems arising, it triggered years of suppressed memories of how this used to go, day in and day out. On the inside of me, a storm was raging, stomach churning and knotting up, heart racing, waves of dread hitting me, and I was just standing there silent. What happens to me on the outside is a blank face. Jason said it looked like Jen had left the building. This is the first time Jason and I have encountered many problems all at once in our marriage. What I've had to learn is that Jason is my partner. He is safe. He is here with me and I'm not alone. And the big kicker, it's okay if I'm not okay. I can tell him and he can step in and carry a little more weight. Do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I am not okay? That's the first question. One thing all couples go through in life's hard knocks, or as Linda said, hard yards. Okay, I'm sorry, let me reiterate that. One thing all couples go through is life's hard knocks, or as Linda said, hard yards. These hard knocks can be financial, car troubles, problems with children, the loss of a job, health issues, problems with intimacy or communication breakdowns, and the list goes on. How do we navigate these things in a healthy way within our relationships? Do we sit and talk it out? Do we come together as a united front, or do we throw blame and run away or ignore it? Are we scared to bring up hard things in our relationships? If so, why? Do we feel alone or a part of a team? Can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together? How? Is how we handle a given situation an indicator of whether we are healthy or unhealthy? What positive things can come about through life happenings within a relationship? And what does it look like when the relationship is unhealthy? Does it matter what people outside of the relationship think? Do we listen to other people and their opinions in order to define our relationship health? This can sometimes be good or bad, depending on the person sharing their opinions and their motives or agenda. If we see some unhealthy elements in a relationship we are in, how do we work through this problem? In every relationship we are in, we are going to encounter problems. That's life. The continued health of that relationship weighs heavily on how we choose to navigate these problems together. Regardless of where we are at in a relationship, we always have the choice to do better in many ways. How we respond to ourselves, how we respond to the other person, how we respond to the actual problems we are facing. The amazing thing about life's problems is it provides us with the opportunity to respond, to grow, as an individual and as a couple together. Thank you all for being here to hang out with us, and we always appreciate your presence and your participation in the discussion. Take it away, Cripps.
Thank you, Jen. That was good. Thank you. All right. Before we get started, Annette Sandrock, our friend, came into the chat, so we'll say hello to her. Hope you're doing all right, Annette. Thank you for being here. We appreciate that. All right. So we're just going to dive in. And I can tell you, Jen's told the story of the cars and all of that. And I have been through this, and I say this, she probably gets tired of hearing me say this, but I have never had a new car. Now, breakdowns happen in new cars as well, and I learned that. I worked for roadside assistance for a while, and I'd have these people say, I just got this new car and it's broken down. So it does happen in new cars, but my dad had the theory, and I kind of agree with him, that when you buy a new car, it depreciates the minute you drive it off the lot, and it continues from there. I don't agree with everything my dad says, but he says that a car is not an investment, it's a liability. And I kind of agree with that because of the depreciation, because things do go wrong. So the point is, I've never had a new vehicle. I've always had used vehicles, and some of them have been in better shape than others, but I've been on the side of the road many, many times. And in that, I've learned how to deal with it better over time. Didn't start out like that. When you're on the side of the road in West Virginia on the turnpike, and back before cell phones were readily available, and you're just hoping that some good Samaritan stops by and gets you some help, or call someone to come help you or whatever. I know it's not like that now, but just to give you an idea of how long this has been happening, it's been a lot. So for me, it's when it happens, it's not like, oh, great, this is awesome. It's not a celebration, but I just have been through it. So seeing Jen react to some of this is not a surprise to me, because again, I'm fully aware that the relationship that she was in was long and abusive, and the guy was not an adult. He acted, in my opinion, he acted like a child when anything would happen. And that's not me. I'm not by any means perfect. I make mistakes. I say the wrong thing, but I am an adult. So when cars break down, there's the initial dread that Jen mentioned. I feel that too. I feel anxiety, like especially when our money's a little short. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to get through this? We live pretty much like a lot of people, paycheck to paycheck. So it's not an easy situation at all. I'm not giving that impression. But as Jen said, she had that look on her face that I've only seen it a couple times. And it's because she had to, in the past, she felt like she had to be, as she said, the strong one, the adult one. And now she doesn't have to do that. So it's a transition, as it would be for anyone else. I just wanted to throw that in there. So, by the way, we're still in the same situation. We'd gone by on Saturday, and we were so excited. Both of our vehicles, this is going to be the first time in a year that both of our vehicles are running, and we popped down $700. Now, some of the things that we had fixed, like the window, it needed to be fixed, and so we didn't spend money on the wrong thing. The things that we did needed to be done, but to have the vehicle still not working properly is frustrating. And so that's kind of how this weekend went. But we pulled through it. Jen did a great job of learning how to be aware of what she was feeling and to discuss it. And we're in a much better place today, for sure. So every time that these things happen, and they happen to everyone, it's not just us, and people have car trouble, as Jen mentioned several things in the write-up, losing jobs, financial trouble, just things going on in the world. I mean, you could watch anything from the news right now and be stressed out and feel anxiety based on that. Just lots of weird stuff going on. So how do we deal with that in a relationship? In this series of, what is a healthy relationship? We're asking and trying to answer that question. So we're going to get right down to the questions. Some really good quotes in here. I just want to mention them briefly. Robin Williams quote that Jen read. I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that make you feel all alone. I just want to comment on this. I agree with Robin Williams. If you're surrounded by people, and we've talked about this idea of people being surrounded by others, but yet feeling alone, that's totally legitimate. you can be in a room full of people and not feel connected to anyone. A lot of people, I think, feel like that. So this idea of people being around you that make you feel. Now, the only thing I would react to is him saying "make you feel."
Me, same here. I was going to mention that.
Yeah. So, if you're allowing people to make you feel something, then you have some work to do. But in general, yeah, I mean, I would not choose to surround myself by people like that. So that's a good one. Does anyone want to comment on that one anymore before I move forward? Okay. The next quote, don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. Albert Camus. It's another good one. The idea of someone, coming alongside you. You've heard me use that term many times. Someone coming alongside you instead of, behind you, being a backseat driver telling you what you should and should not do. That can get really annoying really fast. Okay. So the next quote, let's not forget it's you and me versus the problem, not you versus me. Steve Maraboli. Another great quote, we're in this together. It's not, we're not fighting against one another. This is true in the world. I feel like they're trying to divide people, political lines and race lines and all this stuff, certainly religious lines. And the irony is that if we didn't let other people divide us, and we would be able to find the significance in just being a human living in this world and recognize that we're all going through similar situations and help each other through it, the world would be a better place. Okay, so the first question after all of this. Okay, so Jen says, let's fast forward now with Jason. These car problems arising triggered years of suppressed memories of how this used to go. Day in and day out, on the inside of me, a storm was raging, stomach churning and knotting up, heart racing, waves of dread hitting me, and I was just standing there silent. What happens to me on the outside is a blank face. Jason said it looked like Jen had left the building. This is the first time Jason and I have encountered many problems all at once in our marriage. That's true. What I've had to learn is that Jason is my partner. He's safe. He's here with me, and I'm not alone. The big kicker, it's okay if I'm not okay. I can tell him, he can step in and carry a little more weight, which is my pleasure. Okay, first question. Do you feel safe enough in your relationship to admit I'm not okay? Do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I'm not okay? Marisa, let's start with you on that one.
First of all, hello to YO Dino. Thanks for coming in, dear.
Yes, hello.
I know what it's like to be in the place where you don't feel safe, and Jen's personal account, that's a lot of what I went through. So I know exactly what that feels like, where you have to step up and be the adult, be the sane one, be the calm one, be the one who doesn't get to cry or have any emotions or flip out because they're busy doing it all. So I've been there. And now, do I feel safe? Absolutely. I've had to, we talked a little last week about getting rid of those toxic relationships. And if you can't feel safe, then that's not cool, and that's nowhere you need to be. And thank God I've got good people in my life now, not a toxic relationship in the bunch. And that didn't happen overnight. It took some weeding things out, weeding people out, changing what you want out of your relationships. If you want abuse, then, by all means, hang on to those toxic relationships. But if you don't, if you want love and respect and the freedom to be yourself, then by all means, seek out those healthy relationships. Yeah, I've been there, Jen. I know what it feels like.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but it's nice to not feel alone. So thank you for sharing, Marisa.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Marisa. I'm going to save Glenn for last because I am quite sure that he has a different perspective on this question. I could be wrong, but we'll see. So I'll go next. Do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I'm not okay? Now, I think for men, this is harder to do. It's not okay to say you're not okay as a man. We have to be the strong one. Now, I realize that Jen's ex was nowhere near in the place he should have been, in my opinion, in this area. But I've grown up with men that don't admit that they're not okay ever. My grandfather, if he would have ever said he was not okay, I probably would have fainted. My dad is just kind of a closed off person. You can tell, I feel like I could tell sometimes he wasn't okay, but he would never ask for help. He would never say, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this or that, please help me. In fact, anytime he asks for help, he does it in a way where it's him not actually asking. He's just saying, hey, I have this and that. And he puts other people in the position of offering help, which is an interesting way to look at things for sure.
Yeah.
But my point is, I feel like the culture breeds men to not admit if they're struggling with something. And of course, like everything else, there are situations where it's not like that, where a man is, from my perspective, a little bit more healthy, that is in a healthy relationship with someone that can say, hey, I'm really having a rough time.
Yeah.
And that's where I am. This doesn't happen a lot, but there are certainly times. One of the biggest things that gets to me is taking tests for a job or, to be certified for something and having tech issues, like you're in the middle of trying to take a test or be prepared for something, a class, with doing the work from home thing. I've had that situation come up many times where they're requiring all this special tech that, you're not really familiar with and it's not working. One of these jobs that I was trying to work for, they wait to the last minute before the class starts, 3 weeks unpaid class. They wait till the weekend before to get all of your tech stuff worked on. So if you're having problems, it's just really, really hectic. Now, I'm sure a lot of people hearing this is like, well, that's nothing compared to, what I'm going through. And I'm sure that's true. The thing is, each one of us goes through our own things, but I'm setting an example of when I would ask for help. I really have a hard time with this. And I'm with someone that I can say, babe, here's what's happening. And my hands are shaking and I'm really struggling with this. I'm frustrated. And it gives her the option to be supportive or not. She would have that choice, but she is supportive of me. She's a safe person for me. I feel like when something bad happens, I step up as much as I can, but I know I have the safety in knowing that if I'm struggling emotionally with something, or if I'm having a hard time with something, I can tell her that. So to answer this one, do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I'm not okay? Yes, this relationship I do. I did not have this in my first marriage. I felt like I was the only one doing everything, and you've heard me talk about my ex and saying that she had severe depression, anxiety, and often did nothing about it. So when something bad would happen, like say with my job, I had a soul-sucking sales job at the time, and I would come home very frustrated, and there wasn't any support. It's not even about saying I'm not okay. It's just not the person not being supportive emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, just not there. So it was non-existent. So I've had both. I've had where I didn't feel safe to admit I'm not okay, and the few times that I tried, I was rebuffed. But in this relationship, I definitely do. I would say in most of my relationships now, even with friends, like if I have come to Glenn only on a couple of occasions to share something with him, get his opinion on something. And I have felt comfortable saying to him, like, I'm really struggling with this. And surprisingly, his reaction was very validating.
Emotionally supportive.
Emotionally supportive. Yes. So he is capable of that, in my opinion. All right. Jen, why don't you go next and we'll go to Glenn last. Do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I'm not okay?
Yeah, I was going to mention one thing I've been learning over the years, especially in the last few weeks with the car stuff, that sometimes I have, because of my programming from my last marriage, I have to learn how to admit to myself that I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at how we can trick ourselves with our mind. I spent so many years trying to be the stoic adult,
Yeah.
not freaking out, not having any emotions person
Right.
that sometimes I convince myself I'm okay. And I have to kind of sit back and be like, okay, wait a minute, am I okay? Especially when I have all these raging emotions and stuff going on inside of me, but the outside of
Right.
me is like, chill,
Right.
I'm like, okay, obviously I'm not okay.
Right.
One thing I was going to mention is, on the tail end of talking about, sometimes we have to teach ourselves to admit to ourselves that we're not okay.
Right.
We had an issue we were going to take our nephew out thin to go to Dave and Buster's yesterday afternoon, but all of this car stuff happened like an hour before we were supposed to pick him up. And so we had to let Shannon know we had to cancel. And I ended up having to, like the old me, the people pleaser me would have been an emotional wreck because of these things. Not a wreck, but just, not being okay in the moment currently.
Right.
And if I had plans with someone or someone was expecting something of me, I would forego taking care of myself and just sitting in the moment of not being okay. And I would try to pull myself together and be okay in order to, like with this example from yesterday, to go hang out with Finn. But I just was not in the best place. And I ended up having to tell Shannon, you know what, if this hadn't have been 3 weeks of like chaos with the cars, and I wasn't just so like upset, we totally would still take him out, but I'm not okay.
Right.
So this isn't going to happen. And that was a big deal for me because the old people pleaser me would have just shoved all those feelings down and put on a happy face and taken Finn out. Because that's what I was trained to do. Like in my past marriage, my ex would rage out for a while. And a lot of times I'd be this blank faced person just watching this car wreck of emotions. And then when it got to the point, a lot of times when I would would break me. It's like breaking a horse. I would break down and just start crying. And he, like a switch was flipped. He'd be fine.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, all right, let's get back to work. Right. And I'm like, it's like asking someone to run a mile after they've gotten in a car accident, like what? But a lot of times I was trying to prove to him I wasn't a wuss because he thought I was. And so I would try to pull myself together and stuff down all these emotions and get back to work instead of saying, you know what, like the last 2 hours of you freaking out is like just messed me up and I'm not okay. So no, I'm not going to work.
Right.
So it's just crazy. The other thing I was going to mention is with you and our marriage, I've been learning over the years that you are safe in many different ways. And so this particular situations that have been coming up the last few weeks has just continued to teach me and show me through your actions and how you react to my emotions that you're safe and that I can be safe to tell you, hey, I'm not okay. Which I did, I think, like Thursday night. And so you went and took care of things and I was able to just have a good cry. So that's my answer. Long-winded,
which was very helpful, I'm sure. And thank you for saying all that. And it is true. And I just, because you care about the other person, you don't have to throw things. You don't have to break things. You don't have to kick things or yell and scream and holler. I mean, I think an adult doesn't do that. It's a choice to do that.
Yeah.
Some people will say, well, I just reacted. And I'm sure that could be true for some people. But when bad things happen, you have a choice. Whoever you are, you have a choice of how you're going to deal with that. Are you going to, I'm not suggesting that you don't take a minute to assess how this is making you feel, but initially you're still in the situation and you have to eventually go, in my opinion, you have to eventually go into problem solving. So for
Yeah.
me, there is that initial point. Jen mentioned dread. I feel some of that, the anxiety, especially depending on where our finances. I was thinking the other day, if finances were not an object for you, it would still be an irritation when a vehicle breaks down, because you have to
Oh,
take
yeah.
it into someone and get it fixed, and then you're without a vehicle for a while. It's troublesome for even rich people, that
Yeah.
have all the money to do that. But when you don't have any money, and when you live paycheck to paycheck, it's compounded, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Now, I realize there are people out there that don't even have a car. There are people who are homeless and all that. So I get that. But again, whatever problem a person is facing, it's still serious to them. So this is still a hard thing. Okay, so Glenn is last on this one. Glenn, do you feel safe enough in your relationships to admit I'm not okay?
I think this is all very uncomplicated. I'm just happy to say, tell the truth.
Right.
The thing
Yeah.
is, you have different relationships with different people. So the degree in which you share the information is going to be different, because you'll decide with some people you don't want to say so much, but others you feel you can give them a lot more information. But
Yeah.
I would never, if someone says to me in the street, how you going? And I'm not going to say, oh, I'm wonderful, when I'm feeling like crap.
Okay.
I'll just tell them, look, it's tough. Look,
Yeah.
just be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, the other thing here, I think, is when we think about the safety, you have to think about the other person on the other side of the fence, because if you are not prepared to confide in them, it's unlikely they will feel like they want to confide in you. So you could be missing out on an opportunity for another healthy relationship that you haven't explored.
Wow.
Great point.
Yeah, good
You
point.
mean by not being honest?
Well, exactly. By not being open and willing to declare what is your truth, you're stifling any opportunity.
Yeah.
If you don't tell the truth, where you go with that?
Yeah.
It shuts the conversation off and the opportunity before you even get to first base.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing. I'm going to the chat, and our dear friend Jamie Grace says, in answer to this question, I have a couple of people I can not be okay with, but very few. I will soon have all the unsafe people out of my life. What a celebration that'll be, Jamie. And she continues, because of my background, I don't have to feel unsafe with someone in order to not be able to say I'm not okay. I have to be pretty close to someone to say that. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, you need kind of what Glenn was saying too. I mean, first it's being willing to even share that with someone. But if you don't feel safe with the person that you're with or your person you're around, it seems like that's a hard ask to even say anything about it. And a lot of people don't. They tend to deal with it by themselves. A lot of times, they don't even try.
Like involve anyone else.
Yeah. So Odino says it is hard to stand up for yourself and learn to love and value yourself first, so you can then love others more fully. In turn, then love others more fully. Thank you. I agree with that statement. While we were talking, our friend Torben Rasmussen, my favorite name to say out loud in the world, is in the chat. So please make him feel welcome. Welcome, Torben. We're glad that you're here. Let's see. I think that's all the answers to that one. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, next question. The next little portion to read, Jen says, one thing all couples go through is life's hard knocks, or as Linda said, hard yards, which she absolutely did say, and we've picked that up from her. These hard knocks can be financial, car troubles, problems with children, the loss of a job, health issues, problems with intimacy, or communication breakdowns, and the list goes on. Yeah, it's not an exhaustive list. There's probably many things that could be mentioned in this area. But after mentioning a few of those, how do we navigate these things in a healthy way within our relationship? And I'll go first on this one. So a few things are mentioned. It could be any of these things. Whatever the situation people go through in relationships, in my opinion, we navigate these things in a healthy way by first, as we said last week, I believe it was, I think Glenn was mentioning, forgive me if I'm wrong, but we need to be a healthy person in ourselves for any of this to work. But I will add to that you can be working on being healthy, and you might have some areas that you still need work. But in this particular area, this is a big one when we have things go wrong. So how do we navigate that in a relationship? The first thing, in my opinion, is to be able to admit to yourself, to recognize the issue. In this case, it was car troubles. Easy for me to recognize. That part's not hard. I go pretty quickly into problem solving. So I would go over with Jen what I was thinking, like what the next steps are. And some of it is trial and error. Some of it's calling people that we know. We do have a friend that was helping us, and she was very, very crucial in trying to figure out what was going wrong. So that was part of the process in, reaching out for help. And some people find that very difficult to reach out to people, but I'm not a car person. My dad is a car person, and that automatically means that I'm not. He is not a good teacher. So I do have many stories of me saying, "Hey, can I help?" And he's yelling at me to get an 810 wrench. And I'm like, "What is that?" And his teaching style is to assume that everyone around him should know what he knows. And that's just not a good way to teach. And I was a child, so there's a lot of guilt and shame attached to working on vehicles. I did learn some things. I can change the oil, I can change a tire, I can change a battery, and there's all kinds of things I've learned. Most of that I've learned from my vehicle breaking down. I can pretty quickly identify a sound, or if something's going on with the vehicle, I can often get pretty close at figuring out what's going on with it. But then it's navigating it with the person that you're with by doing it together, not feeling like it has to be you by yourself. And I had an instance when the window broke. I had to tape it up because it wouldn't stay up, and I didn't. Jen didn't want rain. I didn't really care, but she didn't want rain getting into the vehicle, which I appreciate. And I'm like, okay. So we taped it up, put tape around the door frame, and then to the window. Well, it got so hot that the tape that I used, the duct tape, the adhesive warmed up and then let the window slide back down. So I was a little frustrated. This was after some of the other car troubles we were having. We were trying to get the element fixed, Jen's car, and at this time, the vehicle was running rough. We weren't driving anywhere, but we still had this window going up and down when it got hot. So she told me that, hey, the window's down again, and I got up immediately and just kind of walked out the door to go fix it. I didn't communicate with her. I didn't say, hey, can I get some help? I didn't ask for help. I didn't discuss it with her. Didn't do any of that. And she even offered. She said, hey, babe, do you need some help with this? And I said, no, I didn't. I didn't need her help. I didn't ask for her help. And then, I got the window taped up and all of that. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, hey, my wife offered to help me and I didn't take it. I didn't say anything. I could have said, "Oh, I got it. I can, I can do this on my own." But something good came out of this, me being willing to ask for help. I explained to her that I've been by myself for a long time, and anytime something would happen, I had no choice but to work on it on my own. So when you're with someone, you have to learn how to incorporate them in the thing that's happening. So yeah. I think that's something I have learned from this on my end. So I did promise that next time something like that happens, God forbid it should be soon, but I will do better about it, especially if she offers the help of me saying, yeah, of course you can help me, and involving her in the crisis that's going on. That's my answer to that. Went on long enough there. Let's go to Glenn next on this one. All the stuff that we loss of job, health issues, whatever, put your own tragedy or your own problem into the scenario, Glenn. And the question is, how do we navigate these things in a healthy way within our relationships?
Wow, isn't it the same? Pretty simplistic answer. Just get on with it. like how else? It just be spontaneous, communicate, get on with it. To my mind, I don't need to analyze my life history to know that I've got to fix the window.
Some of us do.
Maybe so, but
not for Glenn.
Well past
Not
that
Glenn. Not Glenn. He doesn't have to.
I do not.
Oh, that's great.
If you have another question, I'm happy to answer it, but it all seems so simple to me.
Okay.
Just deal with it, man.
Just deal with it.
Like,
man.
I have a question. So, like for example, with Sandra's health and like, how do you guys communicate about, like, if something, like, say there's a way that you're trying to help Sandra, it's pissing her off. Like, do you guys talk about that and figure out a different way to handle a situation that might be repetitive when it comes to her health?
Okay. That is a fair question, a good question. I'll give you a perfect illustration from yesterday. I helped Sandra with her showers, and but part of the process is that I have to get her dried in part before she can sit down. Okay. But yesterday she was trying to navigate to the wall, and I just said, okay, well, I need to get you dried. And she said, so she let go a tirade, like, you shouldn't be doing it. I'm unstable. I said, well, you can F off and do it yourself then. So I just, it's all a performance. Okay. So I just go to the kitchen for probably a minute. Then I come back and I said straight up, I don't like being shouted at, and I don't like being treated like a slave.
Right.
And I won't take it.
Right.
And then I said, but I acknowledge that you were in a situation where I can see wasn't safe for you. So I'm sorry I did that. I wasn't thinking. I apologize. And she said, well, I shouldn't have shouted at you. I apologize. And I said, so it's all done in 10 seconds. We've moved on, and I'm helping her so nothing has happened. It's a piece of cake. But you've got to say how you feel in the moment, like I keep saying.
Yep. Great advice.
There's no angst when it's dealt with right there and then. It's healthy.
No, I agree with you. But do you think that most people react to things that happen in the same way that you do? Do you think most people are healthy enough to just, that was a great example, Glenn. So you got a little upset, she got a little upset and yelled at you. You walked away for a minute. You came back. You both took responsibility for what happened in the situation, and you moved on. Do you think that most people do that? And I realize it's just your opinion, but that's what we talk about. I don't
think most people do this at all. I think they haven't learned, if you call it the art of communicating in the moment. I think they go away and feel like they take it as personal, but this is not personal. This is just that you've got a lady under stress, feels unsafe. She's quite entitled to lose it because her situation's horrible. I acknowledge that, but if you go over my limit of not wanting to be shouted at, it's only fair that I say so. Just because she's just because she is in an infirm position doesn't mean I can't be who I am.
Right.
This is the difficulty people have. You're trying to find that all the time. You're spontaneously trying to find the equilibrium, and the equilibrium only comes when you talk about it and you address it.
Well, you need to write that down. You need to write that down, Glenn.
That's good.
And that's how the whole relationship works across the board in everything.
Wow.
But it's easy. Truthfully, it is so easy because you never have anger or angst. or any of that stuff, because it's all over within a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't carry any residual garbage with you,
Right.
because you get on with it. You don't hold grudges.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't
No
say
resentment.
no resentment in the future. You don't in a week later. Can you remember when you did that last week? No, none of that
No.
shit.
Yeah.
No.
It's gone. It's done. It's finished. It's over.
Yeah.
Move
Yeah.
on.
Well,
So, yeah.
thank you, Glenn. That was worth
Thank
it.
you.
That was worth it to hear your story of what happened and a good example. And I appreciate you answering the question. That a lot of people don't do this. I mean, it's obvious that a lot of people don't do it. Otherwise, I believe the divorce rate would be lower, and we wouldn't be able to talk about these topics on this broadcast or many others that tackle relationship issues. You wouldn't have all the books written. You wouldn't have all the talk shows dealing with, marital problems and all that.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be a problem.
See, that's the thing, Crips. The only problems you have are the ones you create for yourself.
True.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we move on to anyone else, I want to say hello to Salted Cedar, who popped in the chat while we were talking, and our friend Bobby Meyer is in the chat as well. Thank you guys for being here. And as usual, if you care to answer any of the questions that we're asking, just put it in the chat and I will read them when I see them. But thank you guys for showing up. We appreciate everyone. So yeah, we're past 11 people in the chat. So that's a means for celebration. I love getting in the double digits and stuff. And so that's great. Again, thank you guys for coming by. Okay. Let's go to Marisa on this one with all those things that are mentioned, and put your own issue in there, Marisa. How do we navigate these things in a healthy way within our relationship? Do you think it's as easy as Glenn says it is, or is it a little more nuanced?
Well, I agree with everything you've all contributed, and Glenn has it right on point. You deal with it in the moment. You don't let it become something that it's not. You don't bring baggage from the last 2 weeks' argument about this or that back into it. You deal with it right there, and then you move on. Now, that sounds great for two healthy individuals, but not everybody out there is dealing with either them being healthy and or the person that they're with.
Our friend
to
Bobby,
navigate that.
Marisa,
go ahead.
Not
What?
to interrupt,
Yes. Hi, Bobby. I saw Bobby come in, and hi, Salted. Yes.
Our friend
Bobby says she's never had a healthy relationship.
Never had
so she
a
can't
healthy
imagine.
Oh man.
Well, now, Bobby, come on now. What about our relationship? What the hell was that? I think she means with the opposite sex is what I believe she's referring to. Okay. But if you're in those moments and there's conflict and the other person is having what I like to call behaviors, if they're acting like a spoiled little kid, if they're being violent towards you, towards himself, towards physical objects, think back to what we talked about last week. Those are red flags and signs that you're not in a healthy relationship. Glenn really had it. I couldn't say it better. And what you bring into the relationship, the problems you bring, or what you bring. There is no problem unless you make one. So I agree with that absolutely. Yeah. Except when the other person is bringing in their problems. Again, you have to judge for yourself. Are you really in a healthy relationship? Because it's hard to navigate in a healthy fashion when there's only one person doing it.
Right. Agreed. Thank you, Marisa. What about you? Peanut, by the way, the Nut House just popped in the chat. Our friend Peanut is here with us. And if you haven't listened or if you haven't visited his channel, please go over and give that a look-see. And he's a good friend of mine, has been for a long time. He's been involved with True Story Live in the past. And we're glad that he's here. So definitely give him a shout out over there. So thank you. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. Okay. Jen, you're up on this one. Both all those things, enter your own situation in there. How do we navigate these things in a healthy way within our relationships? What do you say?
Yeah, I agree with all of what you guys shared. There's so much to say. My goodness. So for me, in a healthy relationship that's safe, it's starts off with kind of assessing each other.
Right.
Sharing the feelings, talking about it, how it makes us feel. And that sounds so corny, but not in that particular way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ask how they're feeling about it, share how you're feeling, be emotionally supportive. And for you and I, usually what we do after that is we pray. We pray over the situation.
Yeah.
And then we slide into problem solving together, side by side.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say with what Glenn mentioned, it's so interesting to me because Glenn was talking to us about this particular dynamic years ago, back when I was still married to my ex. And it did seem very simple, but my ex and I had been stuck in a pattern for 13 years. And the pattern went like this. I brought up feelings. He would get defensive, take it personal. And then I would end up, like a person can end up defending themselves, but more times than not, I would go into comforting him because his feelings were hurt that I brought up my feelings. Yeah. And then, so it would end in comforting him, but then apologizing. But then the main issue was never dealt with. It was never resolved. So there was never never a resolution. And it was insanity. It was like we couldn't get off that track. We were constantly stuck on that track. The bringing up feelings, getting defensive, then you're apologizing and comforting to the person because they took it personally, and then it just goes back to the same cycle over and over and over again. Right. But what I was going to say, there is hope. Yeah. If you've got someone that even if they're unhealthy in some ways and they have a desire to become healthy, there's a willingness to come together and make healthier choices. I think that particular thing that Glenn mentioned, it can be learned, it can be practiced, and it's so much better because you hear story after story after story of these relationships where people do keep records of wrong because they're not bringing up how they feel or they're not speaking up for themselves.
Right.
I've heard stories of relationships where one person feels very comfortable with bringing up their feelings and how so-and-so hurt them, but then the other person doesn't feel safe doing that. So then even more resentment builds because they're like, well, you always bring up how you feel, but I don't feel like I can. So there's so many, instances where it gets really sticky, but it doesn't have to be. It's just hard to get out of that cycle.
Right.
Good point. Sharing how you feel, validating each other, and then going into problem solving together, as a team is really healthy.
Right. Thank you, Jen. Okay. So I'm going to ask you first on the next one. So there are several different questions. I'm going to tie them all up into the main point that I get from so the questions are, do we sit and talk it out? Do we come together as a united front, or do we throw blame or run away and ignore it? Now, this is something you mentioned in the write-up in the past, that you weren't in a united front, and this is obviously something that was important to you. What do you say about this series of questions? Do we sit and talk it out? Do we come together as a united front? And particularly about the united front, what's important in that to you?
Being side by side, being a team, and working toward a specific goal, a resolution or a solution to the issue at hand.
Right.
I used to draw out diagrams and charts and stuff, trying to figure out where the breakdown happened, because even though, sometimes the fights that I had with my ex were about the same thing, sometimes it was different things, but from writing out all these notes and diagrams of our fights, I kept seeing the underpinnings were all the same, the skeleton of it, and it was crazy making to me, because I felt like, okay, this is easy. Like coming together, and I had done it before a little bit with other people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand, why can't we just sit down and have an adult, calm conversation and recognize together what the issue was,
Right.
and then come up with a plan to not have it slip into that muddy rut again.
Yes.
But I just was with a person that really didn't want to sit down with me and look at it. He didn't want to talk about it. He just wanted to play the victim and have me fix it, I guess. And that's where my issue came in, because I was the fixer. And there's, in the healthier place that I'm in now, I'm like, there's not that it like overwhelms my mind, but every once in a while I'll kind of run through a memory and I think, I should have done this, not to beat myself up or anything, but to look at it from a healthier place and say, me responding in this particular way when that had happened over and over and over would have been way better, because I was enabling the unhealthy place, because I was responding to the situation in an unhealthy way, not just him.
Yeah.
So
how does it feel now? This is the last one I'll ask you. How does this feel now to have a united front?
It feels amazing, and it does feel easier. And it perpetuates the easiness of it when you can practice it and it works, and there's no huge bang up fight or conflict or crisis. It's just so peaceful, which is just crazy to me, because I had spent a long time where it wasn't that. It was the exact opposite. So it's wonderful. And it the times, because in the beginning when you and I first started dating, I did have a hard time coming straight to you when I had feelings, like upset feelings or angry feelings or whatever. So when I would finally get up the courage to come to you like a timid like animal, the way you responded to me was so wonderful and loving and patient and kind, that every time after that, it just kept building on the last one. Like it kept proving to me that you were a safe person. And so I know we've talked about this many times, the time span between when the instance happened and when I came to you and talked about it, it kept getting smaller and smaller, to where now I come right to you. As soon as the feelings pop up, I come to you and we talk about it. And I think that help perpetuates peace within the relationship, because nothing's hidden. There's no records of wrongs. And, so it's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, as Glenn makes it sound so easy, because for him it is. He's been doing this for a long time. So but as he said, he knows it's not that way for everyone, but to him it's easy. So what about you, Glenn? Do you feel like you and Sandra are a united front? Do you sit and talk it out? Now, I know that some of these things you've answered in the past, and the idea of you throwing blame or run away and ignore it is probably pretty foreign to you. But what about the united front part? Do you feel like that's important?
I was thinking of this while you were asking the others. It's an interesting one too, because it's almost like I had a united front with myself before I met Sandra, and then when we hooked up, it was just the same.
Yeah.
It was really just a continuation, albeit that, of course, when you come to a relationship with someone else, there's compromise and cooperation and all of those things that you would do within a relationship. But essentially, it was just a continuation of what I'd found when I had deliberately put myself to be by myself until I felt ready to go and see if there was a relationship out there. In other words, I wasn't prepared to. When I didn't have my head together, I was no way was I going to attempt or even say I'm interested in a relationship. But once I sort of thought, yep, I'm ready, I went and did it straight away and say, we'll see what's out there.
Yeah.
Like with Sandra, it only took one email and I knew that I was going to marry this woman. I mean, it was just too obvious. So,
right.
There was no way that it wasn't going to happen.
When you know, right, Glenn?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Marisa, what about you? United front, what does that mean to you? And do you come together as a united front? Do you throw blame and run away, ignore it, or do you sit down and talk it out? How do you feel about that series?
Well, I'm not happily married like all three of you.
Well,
so I am my own united front. But in the dynamics of, any kind of relationship, if we're not on the same page, then what in the hell are we doing? Why are you even friends with this person if you're not, coming from the same place of mutual love, respect, tolerance, willing to put up with each other's idiosyncrasies, and
Right.
people are different. Respect each
Yeah.
other's differences, but yeah, there's just really no other sensible way to handle those other people that you have relationships with.
Right.
If you're not on a united front, then what in the world are you doing?
Right.
You're arguing, you're complaining, you're bickering. There's tension.
Yeah.
So
Great point.
I've tried to weed out the toxic people from my life, so I don't have those things going on in my relationships anymore. So thank God.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there isn't problems, but people have different opinions, and certainly life presents different situations, but you go through it, like Glenn says. You just jump in there and you tackle it and you deal with it and move on.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Marisa. I don't want to forget to say hello to our friend Okie Growers 75. She's new to the. They are new to the channel. Have been coming in from time to time. We appreciate you. And for those of you that don't know, this was the drawing that was commissioned for Marisa on Friday night. So you can watch that being put together, as well as Jen's art on Nez Lover's channel. So be sure to stop in and watch that wonderful video. All right. And okay, so on this one, for me, do we sit and talk it out? Do we come together as a united front, or do we throw blame or run away and ignore it? Obviously, it's a united front. And the reason I asked Jen first if that was important to her is because she had described it in the past relationship, the whole 14 years. She didn't have a united front at all. She was basically alone in a relationship. And that wasn't fun. So very much I want to include her in everything. And I want it to be a united front. As she said, we usually, when something big happens, I mean, we pray all the time, but when something big happens, we go into prayer together. We do talk about it. We talk about what the problem is, and we go into problem solving and come up with ways to do that. This idea of throwing blame or running away and ignoring it is pointless. Is absolutely pointless. I have no need to blame Jen for anything. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that Jen's driving the vehicle and she doesn't ever check the oil and it throws a rod because the oil runs out. Now, that is her fault. But blaming her and yelling at her and throwing things and breaking things, how's that going to get us out of the situation? It doesn't do anything to do that.
Nope.
And with Jen, she blames herself, whether it was her fault or not her fault. And a lot of times it's nowhere near her fault. She reacts when when these cars started breaking down. Jen, talk a little bit about that. I mean, when something bad happens because of the relationship that you're in and you are being blamed all the time, do you struggle with that, of feeling like it's your fault?
I do. I just my emotions go straight to it's my fault.
Right.
And that's been really difficult to fight against.
Yeah.
There's still remnants of it there. It's not like as strong as it was, when I first got out.
Right.
It's been slowly dissipating, but yeah, I still have this knee-jerk reaction to think that it's my fault.
Yeah.
And I have to fix it alone.
Right.
It's just like, oh, geez.
Right.
So yeah, it's difficult, but it's getting better.
I think you're getting it pretty quick that, when something happens, you're not going to be blamed, and certainly running away and ignoring it is not going to be my choice.
No.
I mean, I'm not saying I've never done that ever, but all that's in my past now. You can't ignore it. You can't run away from it. All right. The next one, are we scared to bring up hard things in our relationship? If so, why? And I'll go first. Now, I know, Jen, you already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but we can expound on it when it gets to you. Are we scared to bring up hard things in our relationship? If so, why? I think that anytime, depending on, like, if something happens and I know this is an area where Jen might struggle because of past stuff, I might be a little reluctant to bring up a hard thing, but that doesn't stop me from bringing it up. It needs to be discussed. I know that. She wants a united front as well as myself. I want it to be united front. I want to work through things together. So whether something is easy to bring up or hard to bring up doesn't matter. It has to be brought up. So I don't find that hard. Now, I do have other relationships where it might be harder for me to bring things up, but at this point in my life, I know that it just has to be done. So I get prepared. I brace for their reaction, and I bring up the hard thing. So for me, it isn't hard. I'm not saying that I came out of the womb knowing how to do this. It is something that I feel like a person has to learn, because it's difficult. It's difficult to know how someone else is going to react. But I know Jen, and I know pretty much how she might react to things, and I know what things might be a little bit harder for her. So I just treat it with a little more care. And with other people, I already expect the poor reaction, so I'm usually ready for that. I mean, I suppose I could be surprised. What about you, Jen? Are you scared to bring things up in a relationship? If so, why?
So I'll just say, in the past, it was more of an issue, and I have come to recognize it being a fear of abandonment. Like, for me, conflict in my mind felt like if conflict arose, it meant someone was going to leave or the relationship would end.
Right.
So that was really difficult. But on top of that, I felt like if I brought up my feelings, it was going to blow up in my face. And there also wasn't going to be a resolution, because that's what kept happening over and over and over again. But now in the present, it's only a little bit hard. Like I said, it's dissipating with everything that you and I go through, and we work through it together side by side.
Right.
That little bit of fear gets less and less.
Yeah.
But I have other relationships where it's more difficult.
Sure.
And part of it's because I may not know the person as well. I haven't been through a lot of bumps with with your sister. Your sister and I had a happening a few weeks ago, and it had to do with pet sitting. And there was like a whole bunch of people included in running by the house to watch pets while Shannon and her family were in Michigan right after her dog got lost. So emotions were running high. So it was difficult. And I really dealt with some fear, my own fear of, if I speak up about how I'm feeling, is it going to disrupt the connection that her and I have?
Right.
And it didn't, but that fear in the moment felt very real.
Sure.
And I didn't like it. But I recognize that it is from past stuff, and it's my responsibility to bring up my feelings. It's not the other person's responsibility to pull it out of me. And remembering that however they choose to respond, that's their responsibility. It's not mine.
Yes.
So I'm still learning to pull those two things apart, because I spent most of my life feeling responsible for other people's feelings. So that too can play into being afraid, to bring things up.
Sure.
So it's a work in progress.
Sure.
For sure.
Well, you're doing a great job. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Marisa, what about you? Are we scared to bring up hard things in any of your relationships? And if so, why?
In the past, certainly, when I was with malignant narcissists, heaven forbid you bring up anything, because that automatically becomes a reason to go off. I'm sure Jen knows what I'm talking about. Anything, even a noise can be, you look at them the wrong way. And,
right.
Wow. But I had to learn that not to deal with those kind of people in a relationship anymore, and not have those kind of relationships with those kind of people. But even when you're in a healthy relationship, you can have reservations if it's a sensitive issue, if it's an intimate issue, if something personal that you haven't really shared before. It can be a little bit, it can be a little bit of trepidation there. But I think that's normal to feel that way.
Yeah.
And Glenn, like Glenn says, if you just jump in and go for it and deal with it, and there you go. And you don't have to spend any more time wasting more time being afraid, wondering what might happen if you talk about it. Just
Right.
talk about it and see what happens. Then
Right.
talk about it.
And I'm sure there are times when this isn't the case, but I have noticed that a lot of times what you imagine in your mind is nowhere near as the reaction. Well, for some people, like I said, there are some people that it's going to be difficult regardless. But a lot of times the reaction from the other person isn't as bad as we build it up in our mind. Sometimes that's sometimes true. All right. We're going to ask Glenn, and I already know the answer to this, but what about you, Glenn? Are we scared to bring up hard things in our relationship? If so, why?
I'm not scared, but there are times where I'm, what's the word I'm looking for?
Pensive.
Not really liking what I'm going to have to bring up.
Right.
It's like saying to someone who says to you, well, I found something on eBay, it's a size 12, and I have to say, I'm sorry, dear, but you can't fit into a size 12 anymore. I mean, who gets pleasure out of saying that?
No one that I know. No.
It's only it's an example, but people sometimes at some point there are going to be things that are going to be brought up where you don't feel wonderful about bringing it up, but it has to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not that sort of straight down the line that I'm not insensitive enough to know that there are things that need to be said, but you really it's not easy to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
But not scared.
Not scared. Gotcha.
No.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Okay. I'm going to save that one. Okay. Can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together, and how? And I'll start first with this one. The obvious answer is yes. What I have discovered is that very little growth comes from when things go well. And I'm sure there are people that would disagree with that. Maybe you've got stories where everything's going great and you learn tons of lessons from that. But for me, it seems like I only learned through going through tough things. That's just my opinion. So can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together? Yes, absolutely. I have found that in my relationship with Jen. For the most part, we don't struggle. There are areas that Jen and I don't struggle at all. The areas that we do struggle are financial, and fortunately, recently car troubles, but which ties into the financial thing. But in all other areas, I can honestly say that there's no struggle. But in the areas that we have to go through that are difficult, it doesn't tear us apart. It brings us close together. But I believe that's because of how we choose to deal with it. And so when problems come, it can bring you closer together by sharing the experience, by talking about it, not running away from it, by being a united front. All these things that we've mentioned thus far can help you grow closer together. We can learn from the things that happen around us and to us and in our relationship every single time. Marisa, what do you think? Can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together, and how?
Absolutely. How we respond to life's problems gives us a chance to learn and to grow and to mess up and make mistakes and learn and grow from that. Of course, that can be applied to working together in a relationship.
Right. Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Jen, what do you think?
I'm going to say ditto to Marissa's. She stole my answer. Yeah, it's all opportunities, It's like painting, choosing to work through an opportunity and learn from it's like dipping your brush into another beautiful color and adding to the big picture.
Right.
So it's opportunities. So, what is the opposite of that? If you're not coming together and working through it together, it's tearing apart instead of building something together, building something up.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
What about you, Glenn? Can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together, and how?
I think they're issues until you deal with them, and I think they only become problems if you don't.
Right.
Great point.
Well, we can end the show on that one.
Ah, Bobby said something.
You should be paying me for this, you know. This is pretty good.
Yeah. Bobby says, I think it depends on what the problem is. If it's something you have to tackle as a team, yeah, you'd get closer. But if you were on opposite sides of the problem.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think when you're on opposite sides of the problem, you still have the opportunity to tackle it together, though. Because if you focus on the fact that you're on opposite sides, it becomes you versus me. But if you're knowing, okay, this is our relationship that's shared, and it's important to both of us, how can we hear each other out and then work toward a resolution that's good for the both of us as a couple?
Ooh, nice.
But I do understand what she's saying, because I've been there for many years where it's like you're trying to get out of that you versus me situation. And because one person just sees it as them versus you, it's hard. How do you unite with someone who's so adamant on being ununited?
Yeah.
That's not a word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
It is.
Can we please come together? And they're like, no, I want to win. I want you to lose, or I want to be right and I want you to be wrong.
Oh my gosh.
It's just insanity. It can't work.
I have
come at it like that.
Jen, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have seen this a lot in relationships. As you've heard me say, I've been an observer even when I wasn't in one. Well, we're all in relationships, but I'm talking romantic relationships. So I didn't date a whole lot. I had girlfriends and stuff from time to time, but I was waiting. I was waiting for Jen. I was waiting for my wife. I wasn't really a serial dater, but I was a serial observer of other people's relationships. And Jen, you mentioned about, people just wanting to be right. Oh my gosh. I've seen that over and over and over again, where people are just going at each other's throat. And there's the satisfaction that comes when one of them can prove that they're right about something. And it seems like the argument comes more from that than from the actual situation itself. It's about, see, I was right. I don't have any of that. I say to Jen all the time, I'm willing to be wrong. Same. I think it's an ego thing. What do you think, Jen? Do you think it's an ego thing that drives that? The need to be right?
I think so. Yeah. And I think some people that get into that situation, the person that's wanting to be right all the time, maybe it's both people, but it's kind of a power and control thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, ego.
Yeah.
And that's just, I don't think relationships are for competing against each other.
Right.
I don't think that's a relationship healthy wise. That shouldn't be the goal. Let's compete. Let's be on opposite sides. That's not going to work.
No.
Now, if we're playing soccer or foosball or something, sure. This is a relationship, though.
Right. Right. Marisa, did I ask you this one? Can problems that arise be used to grow a couple closer together, and how? Did I ask you already? I apologize.
Yes, you did ask me. Yes.
Okay. Did everyone answer this one?
I think so.
Okay. All right. The next one is how we handle a given situation, an indicator of whether we are healthy or unhealthy. And I'm going to start with Marisa on this one. Is how we handle a given situation an indicator of whether we are healthy or unhealthy? What do you think?
Absolutely. If we're having behaviors and yelling and screaming and hurting ourselves or other people or punching holes in the wall, then
right.
Yeah, that's definitely not a healthy relationship, but not a healthy way to respond.
Right.
So that's the way I see that.
Yeah, I mean this question seems kind of on the nose, but I think it absolutely is. When situations arise, I think I can't do better than Marisa did. That was great. I'll just add to it. She's absolutely right on, in my opinion. It is definitely an indicator. Every situation that comes up will show you whether you like it or not. I have I've said for a long time, a relationship is a mirror. When you're in a relationship with someone, it is a mirror. It shows you yourself as well as showing you the other person, but each of you can see themselves in the relationship. That's my opinion. People can disagree with that, but that's just my perspective. So anything that you go through is definitely an indicator. The way the other person handles it, the way you handle it, the way you handle it together is an indicator. Yeah, we can see a lot from that. It can reveal a lot about the status of a relationship. I'll give you one example before we move on. I read more than one article written about this, looking back at the whole COVID thing. People, not being able to go to work, having to wear a mask, standing 6 feet apart from each other. But the biggest thing was the amount of divorces that came out of that period of time, because people were forced to be together for long periods of time, isolated with themselves in their homes. If that's not an indicator for people, that situation in and of itself is a perfect example, and it's going to reveal to you what your relationship is built on. I think there are a lot of people, both the wife and the husband, they both work, they come home, maybe they eat dinner, maybe they get pizza, whatever, they eat out, maybe they spend some time on the weekend, I don't know, but I don't think people that have to work in this society, they both have to work, I don't think they spend as much time together. So this situation made people stay at home. And the article that I read, I forget who did it, but it was like an aha, absolutely, of course moment for me. And when you put people in this bubble with being home and they're not used to it, it's gonna show either the relationship is being good or being bad. Now, for us, for Jen and myself, when COVID hit, we just sold my mom's townhouse, and I got a portion of that. So we didn't have money struggles for the first several months of our marriage, and we loved it. And that's because our relationship, I mean, it was just starting out as far as living together and being married. But it still would have revealed if there's any cracks in the marriage, in the relationship. And it was just wonderful. I often think about that period of time, and just, we didn't have any stress. I mean, it was stressful to have the stuff going on in the world, but we were kind of untouched from a lot of that because of the situation we were in. We were just able to enjoy each other's company. And so in the mirror, what I saw was that I was very, very blessed and lucky to have this wonderful woman who is working on being healthy all the time, growing and changing and recovering every day. And I am put myself into that same boat. So yes, it can be an indicator. Jen, what do you think? Is how we handle a given situation an indicator of whether we are healthy or unhealthy? What do you say?
Simple answer, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, it's interesting to think about relationships. And when you get into a relationship, I think for me personally, and maybe a lot of people would agree, I wish I could have dated my ex longer and kind of had more examples to pull from when it came to how he handled conflict and just life circumstances, like how he responded. We've talked many times on the show about how people in the beginning of relationships put the best foot forward and so on and so forth. And I think that's why it's good to know someone for a long time. And now there are people that can play it off really well and are tricksters. They can hold it together till there's a ring on the finger. But I think it's good to look at those things and to allow someone's actions and how they handle conflict to be what shows you who, it shows you who they are instead of just words. Yeah. So and within your own relationship for sure. Like, obviously I can look back in my last one and be like, yeah, that was not healthy on both parts. It really wasn't. Yeah. And I was going to say earlier when Glenn was mentioning about saying things right away, when I first started talking to Glenn, when I was still married, we were doing the show, and he and I were having conversations about this simple dynamic that he was trying to share for me. And for me, I remember thinking, this is so hard And he was over here saying, this is so easy. And my mind was blown. I was like, how do people do this? Because I just was so used to the cycle and the dynamic. And I remember I went in back and, not went in, but I went back to my ex and I was like, hey, like, let's try this. It didn't really work. And it wasn't for lack of trying on my end to share right away when my feelings were hurt or I was upset or, scared or whatever. But I do think it takes two people. But I just remember, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to get out of this rut of this cycle that we've been living in for years? It takes two people being willing. But I do remember, he just blew my mind. And I thought, really, like, people can have relationships like this? Like, that was not my reality at the time at all.
No.
But it's doable. It totally is doable.
Yeah. But thank God, now that it is possible. And everyone listening to this, it is possible to have a healthy relationship. And again, we're going to come back to the idea that you have to be healthy. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have every area be healthy to start a relationship. I mean, that's just, for most people, that's just not the case. I mean, it's great if you go into a relationship already fully healthy, but I don't know anyone that's 100% healthy. They have nothing to work on, no growing to do, no changes to make. They're just a perfect person. I have not discovered that. Including myself, I'm not a perfect person. I tell Jen that all the time because she's very praising of me, and I say, well, it's because of what you're coming out of. I mean, I always say if you'd have just married an average person, not a man baby like her ex was, but just an average person, you would think that they were just great. Now, I realize that, I have qualities that are wonderful. I get that. But I'm just saying that when you're comparing it to an abusive marriage, any step up from that would be a good step. But it is my delight to be part of a healthy relationship. And so I'm just saying that, it's not that you're ever going to be 100% healthy, but it's choosing to be healthy. It's being willing to grow and change with that person that makes all the difference. I think that's super important. Okay. Everyone answered that, I think. Glenn, did you answer? Is how we handle a given situation an indicator of whether we are healthy or unhealthy?
Well, I think the answer was obvious, but you do unfortunately get some people who don't really say what they feel.
Right.
And they have it's everything, this, that, what, and the other, and yet underneath they're seething and tearing themselves to bits. Well, that's not really healthy, is it?
No, not at all.
So
not at all.
I suppose you have to have the art of picking when someone's doing BS and someone who's not.
Right. Right.
Feel the energy.
Right. Yeah. Glenn, I'm going to ask you the next question first, since I've got you here.
Sure.
What positive things can come about through life happening within a relationship? What positive things can happen?
Can you please read that again?
Yeah. Sure. What positive things can come about through life happening within a relationship? So
just difficult things.
Yeah, difficult things that come
up. I think that it just teaches you to be adaptable.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing. Adaptable, spontaneous, able to cope with situations, a whole range of things about just working through the dynamics of life, really. Coming out the other side, not being an emotional cripple and all of the stuff that goes with that.
Right.
So, but it takes practice. It's just, I don't think we're born with these skills.
No.
We have to practice.
Yes, that's the important thing. You said that last week, and I agree with that. That's how we get better with anything. I mean, a basketball player, again, doesn't come out the first time they hold a basketball and throw it up in the hoop, and they're a professional. They have to practice. Anything that's worthwhile takes practice. And how is relationships any different? If you want a good, healthy relationship, it's going to take some practice. You have to work through it a little bit. I think that's a good point. That's true. Marisa, what do you think? What positive things can come about through life happening within a relationship? What do you say?
Ooh, I keep hitting the wrong button. I agree with all of you, and you don't learn by sitting there hiding from the world and everybody. You've got to jump out there and do it and be it and get in it. And
Right.
don't be afraid to make mistakes. Know that you're going to
Right.
make mistakes. We all do. But don't be afraid of that. It's how
Yeah.
you respond when things happen, problems come up, and you make mistakes or the other person makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there? And that is the perfect way to detect the state of your relationship,
Yeah.
how you respond, how the other person responds,
Awesome.
and what good can come from that. Learning, growth, your progression down the path of life to a happier, healthier life. What more could you
Right.
ask for?
Right. Thank you, Marisa. I appreciate that. I'll go next, and we'll hear from Jen last on this one. What positive things can come about through life happening within a relationship? Everything positive. Learning more about yourself, learning about the person that you're with, learning how to deal with stressful, anxiety-ridden situations in a healthy way. It is strengthening. It can be emboldening. It can make you more courageous. It can also, especially if you're not used to this, it can also change how you look at bad things happening. So positive things can come by dealing with life in a healthy way with the other person. Also, again, the united front, working with you, doing it together, not trying to handle things on your own. It can all be positive. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the situation is. I mean, God forbid, someone that you're with gets cancer, and that's it seems like it's a different situation. It definitely is a more dire situation than having your cars break down. But you can still have positive things come out of that. The way you deal with death, the way you deal with physical struggle, it can all be the same. That positive things can happen. And I know that sounds crazy. What positive thing can come out of your spouse dying? But it like anything else, it's the way that you handle it. I mean, some of that, I when I was younger, I used to think I listened to a doctor that his whole goal in life was to help people die, to make the last weeks, days, months of their life as good as possible. And I just was fascinated by that. And this doctor wrote a couple books, and he's been on, video exposés and things like that. I wish I could remember his name. But there was a moment that I thought I would love to do that. I would love to be someone that was helping other people if that was something they had to go through. I think it would be difficult, but my point is that whatever problem the relationship faces, depending on how you look at it, it can be very positive. What do you think, Jen? What positive things can come about through life happening within a relationship?
Practice. And I know for me with this car stuff, there were some buried things in me emotionally that needed to be dealt with and let out. It's amazing how when we go through traumatic stuff, how much stuff you're stuffing inside of yourself for so long, for years on end. And you think, oh, I'm out of the relationship. This stuff must just be gone. And it's not. It's like it comes out randomly. It's so strange. But I'm grateful that this stuff with the cars, in a way, I'm grateful because it did bring some things to the surface that I needed to deal with.
Right.
It needed to bring up some pain. And so not only was I working through with you as a team, the car situation, we were walking together through the stuff that was coming up for me.
Right.
And part of the healing aspect of that was seeing how different you are and how healthy you are and how willing you are to come alongside me in those feelings coming up and in the car apocalypse that was happening.
Yeah.
So it had so many different facets. And one of the other things I was going to mention is I too have always had a really hard time asking for help. I'm the first person to offer help, but like for me, sometimes it feels physically painful to ask for help. And one of the things I remembered through some of the memories that were coming up through this whole car situation was that with my ex, when these catastrophes would happen and he'd be flipping out, I wasn't allowed to ask for help with my family or friends. Like he did not want anyone to know that we were going through any kind of problems. So and I know it's weird to think about because you're like, well, couldn't you have done it anyway? Like, he doesn't, but I really was in a controlled situation. I felt very controlled. I didn't feel like I had any other choice but to submit to my husband. And I didn't want to uncover him and all those things that churches tell you. But so not only was I alone in the relationship, I was alone in the situation because I couldn't talk to anybody about what was going on. I wasn't allowed, that's what I believed at the time. Now obviously I know better. So that was difficult.
Yeah,
so there's my answers.
Thank you, Jen. Marisa, what about you? Oh, wait, you were last, Jen, on that one. Sorry, my fault. Okay, here we go. Next one. Does it matter what people outside the relationship think? Do we listen to other people and their opinions in order to define our relationship health? So, Marisa, you get to start on that one. So it's 2 questions. Does it matter what people outside of the relationship think? And do we listen to other people and their opinions in order to define our relationship health?
That depends on what people are giving their opinions and advice. If it's negative, hateful people, we don't give to what they've got to say about anything at any given reason and any given time or place. Who cares what they've got to say?
That's great.
But if it is somebody who is objective and someone who is outside of the relationship dynamic, they don't even have to know you or the other person, but if they can just like I said, an objective point of view.
Right.
That certainly, in my experience, has been beneficial. Glenn certainly has helped me being the objective person many times. Also talking about counselors or whatever healthcare professionals you might confide in. Again, it's really when you're getting advice, it helps if it's somebody who doesn't necessarily know you or the whole dynamic of the situation. Somebody removed can far better see things clearly and fairly and objectively. If you go to somebody who's a mutual friend or family member, I'm sorry, but there still tends to be a bias or a slant, and that's they may not be trying to be coming from that kind of place, but it's best to get the qualified, genuine, actually interested in helping you kind of opinion. That kind of opinion, I think, is what counts. So pay no attention to what the negative people say.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, what good is it if it doesn't help? If you're asking someone for help or if you're telling them what kind of situation that you're in, what good does negative feedback do? I just don't see it.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marisa.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Jen, what do you think? Does it matter what people outside the relationship think? Do we listen to other people and their opinions in order to define our relationship health? What do you say?
I would agree with Marisa. I think it depends on the person, what they're saying. I had one of my sister-in-laws tell me the first time I'd gotten into like a big fight with my ex after we were married, I went to my brother and his wife, and I was really upset, really emotional, and she just flipped out and was like, "You need to divorce him." And that's not what I wanted to hear. I'm like, we just got married. And I wasn't one to like throw in the towel so haphazardly. I was like, it's just a fight. Yeah, I'm upset. But now, of course, I can see some of the things that they were seeing in the beginning. So I get where she was coming from. But at the time, it wasn't helpful. I was kind of wanting someone to vent to and to kind of like talk more about the details of what was going on and not just get this haphazard, hey, divorce him while you're
Right.
yelling.
Right.
But I will say that I think it can be very beneficial if it's someone who, like Marisa said, is logical and
Yeah.
not biased. And I know I always bring up Glenn. Glenn was a really, really helpful person to have come into my life at the time that he did, because it felt like a fog. I felt
Yeah.
like I was in this thick, thick fog and had no idea that I was in it. And when Glenn started talking to me about healthy, relationships and how people, should be navigating relationships, what he was describing to me was so different from what I
Yeah.
was living in.
Sure.
And I know in the beginning, I was so focused on my ex's actions, and Glenn really helped me point out, or what are you doing? What are your choices like?
Yeah.
And also helped me realize that I did have control over me, which I, at the time, before I met him and we first started talking, I didn't feel like I had any control over my life. I felt like I was under the reign and rulership of my husband at the time.
Right.
And
Right.
so it was very, very beneficial to have Glenn enter my life when he did, and to share some very poignant thing and ask some really hard questions. He's just amazing with the questions, because
Yeah.
by him asking, who wasn't telling me how to think or what to think or how to feel, he was just asking these very direct questions that then got the wheels turning in my head to kind of look at the situation from a different perspective. And it was mind blowing. Like, I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been stuck in this fog, this one
Mhm.
perspective for so long. So I think it'd be beneficial. I think we've all encountered friends or friends of friends who they just, diss your spouse, or, he's a drag or she's a drag, you should leave, or, it's very negative. And I
Yeah.
think that can be destructive, even when it is a healthy relationship and you have people in your life that are talking down on your relationship, or
Right.
you're just sharing something frivolous, that a bump or something that you and your spouse went through.
Mhm.
That's not helpful.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to be careful. I think it's good to define your own relationship, but sometimes it's good to have an outside perspective, not necessarily to define it,
Right.
but to maybe give you a better outlook on what's going on and
Yeah.
if it's healthy or not. So
Yeah. To be able to see it a little bit better.
yeah, outside the
Yeah.
bubble.
Yeah. Because as I've said, especially, I believe it's harder to see yourself than it is for other people to see you. But that's just my opinion. Thank you, Jen. What about you, Glenn? Does it matter what people outside the relationship think? Do we listen to other people and their opinions in order to define our relationship health? What do you think?
I think sometimes it matters. I think there's a couple of scenarios. The person who comes to you and says you're doing this or that wrong,
Right.
I tell them to piss off.
Yeah.
But the person who comes to you with and presents you with an opportunity to guide you by what they say,
Right.
so that you can make your own decisions, that person's beneficial. That's what I'm
Yeah.
not big noting myself, but that's the whole deal with Jen, was never to say what you should do, but to try to present the options that are
Yeah.
available to you for you to make an informed choice. And that only comes from within the person, not doesn't come from anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think some people you listen to, some people you don't, because they just don't have anything to offer. The person
Right.
who says, "Oh, Jen, you should get a divorce," well, what does that mean? That's just stupid. That doesn't help you. Surely,
No.
it's. I laughed. I was sort of smiling when the answers were coming, because I remember your mum, when she was coming to Australia for the first time, she said, "Oh, one of my friends said to me that you could be a murderer and you could stuff me in the boot of your car and dump me in the bush." It's like, but it's true. You either listen to that person or you don't. You make a decision.
Yeah. The English translation to what my mom said is trunk and forest, or woods.
Yeah, the boot, the trunk. Yeah,
The
that's
boot.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Shane, that was sort of funny. And Sandra had the same thing. Her people at work said, "How can you just, at the drop of a hat, take up with some guy and just, within a day, you're living together?" She said, "Well, it's my decision." Actually, I can't imagine what Sandra would have said, because she probably would have been, beep, off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank
You either
you.
listen or you don't. You get the choice.
Right. Right. Well, I can't do any better than what everyone else has already said, so I'll just say that I agree with that. I think that it matters, as Marisa said, what who you're asking and whether they're trying to be helpful or whether they have a negative outlook or they have an agenda. Now, I've got an example of this really quick, and then we have one more question to ask before we say goodnight. So we're very close on that, guys. So appreciate you being here this long. So thank you. My mother, she was alive when during my first marriage, and she made it very clear to me from the first time meeting her that it was she didn't like her, and she was not helpful in my relationship with her. And when I did, because she was my mom and we were close, and so I would go to her with things. And one example is that we were having, surprise, surprise, financial troubles during a recession. We just happened to get married during the 2007 to 2010 recession that was happening in the United States. And so we were struggling to find jobs. And because my ex didn't work, she couldn't hold down a job. It was pretty much all on me. And I was very challenged by that in that period of time. So we both went to my mom one time, and it was my idea, my foolish idea, in getting advice from her and telling her our financial troubles. And honestly, what I was hoping for was for her to say, well, you guys can just stay here for a while until things, clear up. And, they had a big house with plenty of room. But that's not what she said. Her response to that was, well, why doesn't Jen go home and stay with her family, and Jason, you can stay here with us and get a job, and then you can bring her back when things get better. That was her answer to it. Now, hearing that, not knowing my mom, I'm sure opinions can vary on whether that was helpful or not. But to me, separating us during a difficult time was not the best idea. My point is, you can get advice from the outside that's not helpful at all, especially if there's an agenda. The next sentence that Jen put in, this can sometimes be good or bad depending on the person sharing their opinions and their motives or agenda. So if the person you're asking has an agenda, and especially if you know what that agenda is, and in my mom's case, she wanted me not to be married to her, which I think was unrealistic on her part, but it is what it is. So I should not have gone to her and asked for relationship advice, especially to examine whether it was healthy or not. Now, looking back, it was unhealthy, and my mom had been right in many ways about my choice, for sure. But, and I feel this sometimes in the relationship I'm in. When Jen and I got together, her family was pretty dubious, and I nipped it in the bud right away. I acknowledged that, yes, I understand her coming out of an abusive marriage and her not taking time to grow on her own and be alone for a while. I understand that her family didn't think it was a good idea and they had concerns. I got that at the beginning, especially. But now, with several years under our belt, and some of her families, come along, and they know that I'm a good person for Jen. But there are still some members of the family that don't seem super supportive even after all this time. So I wouldn't go to those people and ask them for relationship advice. I wouldn't go to them for anything. And that's just the way that it is. But there are other people that I think it's very important. It's very helpful to go to them and ask, just get their opinion. The Bible says in the multitude of counsel, there is wisdom, but be sure that the person you're asking is a wise person and not a fool. I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Did everyone answer? Did I ask everyone? I think so. I'm going to pop up what Glenn said in the chat here real quick. Glenn said Linda, whilst being pragmatic, needed to let Cripps find out for himself it was that experience that defined his future. I suggest he would not be with Jen if he did not have that experience. That's right on. And I've said this. Jen and I have talked about this. If I hadn't had that relationship and hadn't learned from it what I did, it's likely that Jen and I wouldn't be together. There were several things that happened. The very fact that Jen's in my life, honestly, is a miracle. My mom died before we met, and I have said, I think if my mom were alive, I'm not saying I wouldn't have gotten with Jen, but it would have been problematic based on how she handled my first marriage. My mother didn't seem to want. She wanted grandchildren from me, but she didn't want me to be married. But I think she would have loved Jen. I really do, and maybe I'm giving her a hard time, and I shouldn't be. Okay. So last question. If we see some unhealthy elements in the relationship we're in, how do we work through this problem? So with everything that we've talked about on this second broadcast of the series, the 4-part series on healthy relationships, this is, I think, a question of what it all comes down to. If we're asking people or we're going through it ourselves, it comes down to, if we see some unhealthy elements in a relationship we're in, how do we work through this problem? Okay, I'm going to go first on this. It goes back to what I believe it was Glenn that said, the people have to be healthy. Okay, but that's not always the case. And a lot of times you could have some healthy things about you and you could have some unhealthy things. So regardless of whatever the situation is, if you're noticing the unhealthy things in the relationship, that is a bonus. I have seen a lot of people in horrible marriages. They might be able to admit, yeah, this is a horrible marriage, but they're not able to look at themselves and see the unhealthy elements, or to self-diagnose, so to speak. So if you're seeing unhealthy things and you're willing to admit it, that's a good step. So then, in my opinion, we can do a whole broadcast probably just on this question, so I'll keep it short. To work through the problem, acknowledging that there is a problem is key. Working through it together, we go back to that united front, if at all possible, working through it together, sitting down and talking about it, discussing the actual problem, and then problem solving together, and then tackling whatever the problem is. And it seems so simplistic, my answer, but I think Glenn would agree. To people that are in a healthy relationship, it's all super easy. I often say to Jen, and this is based on watching other relationships, everyone said, almost everyone, including my grandparents, my dad's parents, which I thought they really, I looked at their marriage as a model because there were many things I saw that was positive. They said, marriage is difficult. Everyone said that. Marriage is hard. You just have to keep at it. You have to be committed. And all that stuff is true. But my marriage isn't hard. And people are saying, well, you're still in the honeymoon. No, we're not. We're not in the honeymoon phase. We've known each other for a good amount of time, and we've been married for 2 years. That's still a young marriage. I get that. But everything that's come up, we have dealt with in a healthy way. That's not going to end as long as the two of us are both committed, and we are, to being healthy and to dealing with our own issues as individuals and as a couple. So that's really important. Notice the healthy elements and work through it together. Jen, what do you think? If we see some unhealthy elements in the relationship we're in, how do we work through this problem?
I think talking about it together is good. Sometimes therapy is important, or could be helpful. But yeah, bringing it to the table. And I think also being mindful about reminding the person you're with, hey, we're in this together and we're on the same team. And I want to see us get through situations that are similar to this in a better way, more
Right.
loving, or even get through it quickly instead of having it drag out for days or weeks.
Right.
So let's come together and figure out how to approach this in a healthier way.
Yeah.
For the benefit of us.
Agreed. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jen. Marisa, what do you think? If we see some unhealthy elements in a relationship we're in, how do we work through this problem? What do you say?
We have accountability, we have honesty, and we really need to just have the courage to jump in there, like Glenn says. Again, going back to
Yeah.
Glenn, just jump in and deal with it.
Yeah.
What not dealing with it or pretending the problem doesn't exist doesn't make it magically disappear or go away. And I think we've all lived enough life to know that's true.
Right.
You simply have to address those things.
Right.
Or again, what are you doing? You don't address those things are gonna pile up, and then it's going to end up in a big disaster.
Yeah.
And you don't need that. I've been there too, where you let things slide, and you let things pile up, and don't
Yeah.
procrastinate as far as dealing with those problems and issues that come up. The
Right.
healthy way, like Glenn says, is just to deal with it. Just do it.
Right.
Just
Good.
do it.
Just do it. Thank you. Thank you, Marisa. What about you, Glenn? If we see some unhealthy elements in the relationship we're in, how do we work through this problem?
Exactly what you guys said. I think the first prerequisite is what unhealthy looks like.
Right.
Because if you don't, or you're not going anywhere, are you? It's just going to
No.
perpetuate itself.
No.
But I can see where you say that. Okay, let me put in my own situation. The only time I've had what I would consider is a healthy relationship is the one I'm in terms of that sort of de facto or married relationships. It's the one I'm in now. That was the one that feels like it's no effort, even though when you reflect upon it, you're actually putting a lot of effort in, but it doesn't exhaust you to do it.
Right.
You're energized by it
Yes.
rather than
Yes, Glenn.
Yeah.
Okay, so it becomes like it's sort of just automatic. Everything becomes spontaneous, and you're not dragging along all that baggage. So it feels easy, even though you're putting a lot into it.
Yeah.
Okay, but the other thing for me was this is the only relationship I ever had where I never had a honeymoon phase. I never got this 1 or 2 years or whatever it might
Right.
be that I
Right.
had with anybody else, where the steam goes out of it. The steam never sort of stopped.
Right.
It's just the same as it was 20 something years ago, and it's very difficult to say that to someone.
Yeah.
But the connections that has not increased or decreased; it's just stayed constant.
Right.
Now, I can't explain it. I can only say how it feels. So
Right.
yeah, so it's interesting where you only get that healthy relationship is way different. I found than anything else that had preceded it.
I'm glad you
It's
said
on
that.
another level altogether.
I completely agree. And I studied this whole honeymoon phase. And yes, it does exist for certain couples. And the reason I believe it exists is because we have chemicals when we meet someone new, and we can feel the love feelings or the chemical feelings, the endorphins and the oxytocin that floods our bloodstream. And then we make decisions at the beginning based on how we're feeling at the time. And then real life happens. Let's say you get through that and you get engaged, you date for a while, you get engaged, you get married, and then you're living with this person. If you didn't do that before you were married, but that happens a lot too. But either way, you're living with this person, and then the cars break down, the jobs don't come, they shut everything down, and you can't work, and you have all this stuff happen, and the chemicals aren't going to get you through that. I don't care how good the chemicals are, they're not going to get you through that. And the chemicals do fade, they do. But I agree with what Glenn said. If you're not interested in the chemicals, if your relationship is based on more than that, it should be based on your love for this person. It shouldn't be based on how they make you feel. I really feel strongly about that. And I don't believe it has to be that way. It's not for Glenn. He's been married 20 years, and the way he describes it is it just keeps going on, and that's the way I feel with Jen. It's not based on how we felt. I mean, the chemicals, when Jen and I were talking at first and we realized there were mutual feelings on both sides, there's some powerful chemicals. Don't get me wrong. There was one conversation we had when we were admitting to each other, yeah, I definitely am I'm having feelings too, where I could barely speak. The chemicals were so strong. And we talked about it. That was the funny thing. I was like, oh, I can barely speak. She was like, oh yeah, I'm like shaking and stuff.
I'm like, I couldn't breathe.
Right. You couldn't breathe. We started from the beginning, just being willing to say that, just be open about how we're feeling. And that has set the precedent for the entire relationship. Be open, be honest, be transparent, be willing to be the safe person, and let them be the safe person for you. So, I mean, we all see these unhealthy elements in the relationship, and we can work through it by just putting our head down and agreeing that we don't have any control over some things. Yeah, and don't create the problems for yourself, as Glenn was saying. A lot of the problems in relationships are caused by the people in them. But sometimes it's not anything you cause. It's from the outside. We can't control what happens to us in the world. A lot of the things. You can have the best job in the world, making $240,000 a year, and then the company goes bankrupt. What do you do then? It has to be more than just chemicals. It has to be more in the relationship that you're in, other than just the way the other person feels. So there you go. There's that. Okay. Did everyone answer this last question?
Think so.
I think so. Okay. Jen finishes, in every relationship we are in, we are going to encounter problems. Isn't that the truth? That's life. The continued health of that relationship weighs heavily on how we choose to navigate these problems together. Amen. Regardless of where we are in a relationship, we always have the choice to do better in many ways. How we respond to ourselves, how we respond to the other person, how we respond to the actual problems we are facing. The amazing thing about life problems is it provides us with the opportunity to respond, to grow as an individual and as a couple together. And there we have it. Thank you all for being here to hang out with us tonight. We always appreciate your presence and your participation in the discussion. See you next week for Jason's take on healthy relationship. That's me. So I'll be doing next week in part 3 of healthy relationships. It'll be interesting to see what I come up with. And guys, we know that dealing with a topic like this and doing 4 broadcasts from different perspectives, there's going to be some overlap. There's going to be some things that we kind of all say. But what I believe is that the things we really, really hit and really focus on, those are the important elements. I'm sure Glenn, when it gets to him, he'll have some different perspectives, which we love. We love that there's different perspectives. So just bear with us if there's some things that seems like we've talked about before during the series. Just know that those are the things that I feel are the most important, the ones that we all see from our own perspective, and we discuss those things again. So thank you. All right, we're going to say our goodbyes, and I also want to say hello to Preliminal. I hope it said that.
Nope.
I said that for 2 years in a row when I went live every night for 2 years in a row. I said it wrong for
okay. Preliminal,
or you can say Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Patrick is much easier.
All right.
Oh, that's true,
welcome.
Patrick.
Welcome. Also, This Is Me popped in. Yay, this is me. This is who? Who are you? This is me. Welcome and good night. Okay, so we're going to have Marisa close us out. Let's hear from Jen. Jen, say goodbye. And if you have any closing comments for your write-up, just feel free to put those in there.
Yeah, I just, this was a good discussion, I think. And I'm so glad that we're all coming at it from different perspectives and just sharing kind of the things that we've been learning as we're moving along in life. And of course, these things that we've talked about can apply to friendships as well, but we're kind of, I guess we're focusing more on like coupled relationships, but it goes hand in hand with friendships for sure. And we appreciate you guys being in the chat and sharing your feelings and perspectives and opinions. we really appreciate it, because without you, it's just four peeps chatting on the phone.
Right.
And although I find these people very interesting and lovely, it's just so nice to have all of you guys in the chat. So thanks. Have a great night. We'll see you next week. And you guys are in our prayers.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Glenn, say goodbye to the peoples for me, please. And if you have any closing comments, please feel free to add them.
Yep, I shall say goodnight, and I'll add that just how important I think it is that if you are in any kind of relationship with someone, it is that you actually like them.
Yeah.
Just something really simple. Just liking the person that you're spending time with is, to me, is a huge bonus. So
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Glenn.
thank you very much. Good night.
And on my side, I'll say good night to everyone. Thank you for everyone that took the time to join us in the chat. We love people that just listen and they're not part of the conversation, but we invite you to actually show up in the chat if you can and be part of the conversation. Answer some questions for us. We really love that. But if you're listening to playback, thank you so much for stopping by. If you hear any of this content that you enjoy, just do us a favor and let people know about it. Word of mouth is the best advertising, in my opinion. We are trying. Marisa is going to help me learn how to promote the channel. And we have, just really quickly, some exciting news. We're working on 2 other channels that Jen and I are setting up. One of them is called Dr. Sleep, and there'll be some reading from me on there, short stories or true stories or all kinds of things. And we're working on that. Jen is working on the logo for that. And another one that's called Out of the Darkness, which is going to be a channel related to narcissistic abuse. It is a popular topic. There's a lot of material, a lot of stories to be told, and we'll tell you more about those when they're both up and running. And that's going to be here soon. So I'm excited about that. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And we'll pass it over to Marisa. Oh, one more thing. Next week, it's me. I'll be doing the write-up, and then Glenn will be doing the capsule at the end, the 4th broadcast. So I'm excited about that. So I'm going to get to work early instead of waiting till the last minute. We were talking before the broadcast that I'm a pressure cooker, and Marisa, backed me up on that. Said I admitted that I wait till the last minute, but I'm going to try not to do that this week. I've got some time to put some together, and I'm going to try to switch it up a little bit for my perspective. Okay, Marisa, go ahead, please, and close us out. And if you have any closing comments, please add them.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jen. Another great conversation. Thanks to everybody who came here and everybody who watches the replay. Thank you so much. Don't forget, we're doing this every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on True Story Live. Please share it out on your social media as you see fit. And I agree with Jason. Word of mouth really does help. So thank you so much for sharing out our content and talking about it and getting more people to come here and join in the conversation. I think, just to sum it up, a healthy relationship is going to reflect itself in your health, in how you view life, and how you treat other people. It's going to just make you a better person. If the person you're in a relationship with is not doing that, if they're bringing you down instead of lifting you up, then that's fine. You're not in a good, healthy relationship. You need the ones that are going to lift you up, not put you down. Thank you all for being here, and looking forward to Jason's segment next week right here. God bless you. We'll see you next Sunday, God willing, here on True Story Live. Good night.